the rabbit culture. Sometimes the reality exceeds fantasy is the case in the story of the adoption of my son. On a morning in December of 1991, in the village of Latina, Italy, Maria Capaldo calls to her husband, Antonio Tito Capaldo, as he prepares to spear a grouper that watches him from 20 meters down an outcropping of boulders. But Maria's words halt Tito's fishing. International Social Services has word of a child in Romania, a boy named Marco. He is 6.5, older than they had hoped, but available for adoption. As they take the 148 to Rome, Tito and Maria discuss the possibility. They stop at the house of a pediatrician friend who suggested a child no older than 3. Professor Menicella says a child of 6 or 7 has already formed a character, which must surely be negative after time in a Romanian orphanage. In the car afterward, Tito looks up to the slopes of the Magella Range and pictures himself teaching Marco how to ski. He goes on to tell Maria snippets of his childhood, an idyllic experience, herding sheep and being one with nature. He wishes he could offer Marco the same. Then the car passes a statue of Ovid in Sulmona. Tito tells Maria that Ovid lived in Romania. It's a good sign. Maria tells him they must think on this in the morning. Better decisions are always made then. The couple arrives at Tito's parents' house in Campo di Grove, where preparations are underway for a family get-together. Tito tells Maria not to mention the boy in Romania until they have decided for sure. While his mother cooks, his father greets them, then teases his wife about the Pope, who has made the local TV news. After the meal, Tito grabs a jacket and heads into town. At the local bar, Tito greets a few friends and the owner, who calls him Rec because of his career as a pilot. He plays cards and argues with his cousin about Italian politics. They walk outside for some air as Tito and his cousin finish their argument about politics. Then they head back into the bar where everyone else is singing. Tito comments that singing in choirs brings people together. Afterward, he goes to the sea and watches the water, shiny like oil, and sees God in the cyclamens around him. Then he goes to find Maria, his decision made. Tito tells Maria they should prepare the adoption papers as soon as possible. Maria has a friend who recommends a lawyer who has handled these Romanian adoptions before. He will prepare the paperwork, then join them on a trip to Romania. They visit a social worker. She doesn't have pictures of Marco, but knows he is in an orphanage called Bretea Streioulu, in a village in Transylvania. Tito makes a joke about Dracula, which Maria downplays in front of the social worker. They get coffee on Veneto Street. Maria is surprised Tito cares about a picture of the boy. Surely a child with good manners is more important. Maria says everything is beautiful as long as you profoundly know it. Then they discuss how love shifts from possessiveness to friendship over time, and Maria decides to take their dog Max, a Yorkie, with them to Romania. They see the plane and worry it won't get them to Bucharest. Once off the plane, they meet the lawyer's friend, Dana, whose job is to translate and help them navigate the process. When they arrive at the hotel, Rome children extend their hands for money, but Dana is able to get them to move on. Dana explains that the children are runaways or abandoned. They live in the sewers to keep warm. The three go to dinner and discuss democracy and the idea that politicians are dominated by the need to belong to the pack. Tito wonders how he will teach all of this to a boy who doesn't speak Italian. Maria says they will teach Marco the language. The next morning, Dana arrives to take Tito, Maria, and the lawyer to the Court of Minors. They walk past the courtroom in session, and Tito is unnerved by the austere surroundings and handcuffed prisoners. Surprisingly, they get the paperwork they need quickly, and Tito sighs with relief when they are out of there. They take the road to Petesti on the way to the orphanage. Dana mentions her sister Joanina and her husband. They will visit them on the way back so that Tito and Maria have another contact in Romania. On past Petesti, they finally arrive at the orphanage Bretea Străiolu. As they emerge from the car, they hear children's voices. Maria gives Tito a hopeful look. The children sound happy. The director greets them at the gate, and the small group follows them to his office. They pass the playground where about 80 girls and boys play. They are dressed in colorful, mismatched clothes and have the same shaved heads. Tito notices them stopping to stare as they pass. While his assistant goes to get the boy, the director shares what he knows about Marco. He is a bit exuberant and in good health. He was adopted by a Canadian family, but it did not work out. Maria's eyes slide to Tito's. Should they be worried? But just then, Marco shuffles into the room. He looks embarrassed and confident at the same time, much like the prisoners Tito had observed earlier in the jail. Dana, speaking Romanian, tells Marco that these are his new parents. She gestures to Tito and Maria. Marco looks at the director and smiles faintly. Maria moves close and hugs Marco with tears in her eyes. Tito only winks. Marco looks back, a benevolent challenge in his eye, his toughness endearing him to Tito immediately. Instantly, Tito feels like a father. Back in the courtyard, Marco holds Max the dog while Maria hovers nearby. Dana finishes up with the director. Maria interrupts as she notices Marco's front teeth protruding. Using gestures, Tito asks him why. Marco shows that he sucks his thumb. This surprises Tito, and Marco looks sad at the look on Tito's face. A group of kids huddle around him, and Dana explains that they are asking Marco to buy them certain items. Marco tells them yes and no in turn. In the village, the group walks toward lunch. Tito sees a toy store, but Marco shakes his head. He tells Dana he wants a comb, soap, and chewing gum. Back at the orphanage, Marco passes out sticks of gum while the other children sidle up to Tito and Maria and gesture for them to take them too. One boy, Jonica, even starts reciting the alphabet. Heartbroken at this, Tito shrugs and cracks an apologetic smile. Then, Tito pulls Marco aside. They must wait for the paperwork before they can take Marco home, but they are coming back. He tries to let Marco know, but isn't sure the boy understands. As he finishes, Marco gives him a wink, and Tito is surprised to feel like he is the one reassured. 6 months later, Tito and Maria head back to Romania to collect their son. Joanina meets them at the airport to help with the proceedings. Marco doesn't cry when they collect him at the orphanage, but he does get teary at the airport when he says goodbye to Dana. Tito watches this brave young man, now almost 7, as he leaves everything he knows for something he can't even imagine. The new family arrives home to a house filled with colored balloons, but Marco is drawn to the Christmas tree. Then, Tito's parents join them for dinner. They use the dinner table conversation as a lesson in Italian. Marco laughs and catches on quickly. The first week races by, as Tito readies to get back on the flying schedule, and Maria teaches Marco the basics. Although the orphanage said he was in 2nd grade, Marco doesn't know the alphabet, nor is he able to read or write his name. Tito and Maria realize that Marco must not have attended school at all. Maria sits him down for lessons. Marco is attentive but mischievous as he follows her directions. Tito expresses his concern to Maria about school, but she tells Tito to go back to work. She can handle their new son. A few years later, when Marco is in 5th grade, Maria meets Tito at the door as he returns from work in Palermo. Marco's teachers have been calling. It's his behavior again. He was seen harassing girls in the bathroom. Tito calls to Marco, but Marco produces a letter a girl wrote to him. In it, she professes her love and wants Marco to meet her in the girls' room for lots of kissing. In this case, Marco is innocent of causing the trouble. Tito and Maria take the letter into school to set the record straight. On a holiday to Greece, Tito, Maria, and Marco settle into the small village of Ceri and prepare to free dive with Rino and Giovanni. Underwater, they see blue damselfish, pickerels, and curious garfish. That night at dinner, they eat fish and dance the sirtaki. Tito looks at his young family. This is the life he wanted for all of them. The ease of a good day, the comfortable company at night. Back at school, the problems with Marco continue to get worse. In addition to his bad grades, the other parents complain about his interactions with their children. Marco also knows his birth mother had 3 more children after him, but only gave him and his older brother away. The family was poor, but this makes him sad. He tells Tito and Maria of a time he went home for a visit. He remembers the glazed cupboard with glasses. His mother made him eggs, but said he couldn't stay with her. As he comes back from the memory, Marco wipes his eyes and stares dubiously at Tito and Maria. They can see it on his face. Why should he trust them? Why should he trust any adults? After Marco goes to bed, Maria puts on a brave face, but Tito can see her pain. The troubles continue as Marco grows up. As a teenager, he asks to leave the house one night at 11:30 p.m. When Marco ignores Tito's demand that he stay home, Tito calls the police to bring his son back. Marco meets with a social worker. She reports that Marco's early abandonment continues to impact his view of the world. When they bring Marco home, he tears apart his room, throwing books, breaking his lamp, screaming at his parents that he wants to go back to his mother. Tito and Maria sent Marco away to a therapeutic community in Tuscania. Marco beats his head against a wall in anger, but the facility is used to such mischief and has him well in hand. A blonde girl there calls him beautiful hair. She has addiction problems, like all of the other teens in the place, except Marco. Tito and Maria come for twice a month, meeting with other families involved in the program. Though embarrassed, they whisper to each other that this is for Marco, though Tito doesn't like that all the other families are dealing with drug addiction, not behavioral problems. The counselor catches them whispering during the meeting, and Tito and Maria pull away from each other guiltily. As part of his rehabilitation, Marco trains for a pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela with other boys from his school. They travel on foot, sleeping in tents. Tito and Maria wait at the end near the enormous cathedral, which looks more gloomy than usual because of a cloud of smoke that covers the area. They try to find their son among the other walkers. Then, there he is, grinning like usual. It has been a test for him, and Marco has passed.